the final thing, really, is this character, Henry Brown. I've always known as Henry Box Brown. And he was enslaved in Virginia. It is going to come to Manchester soon, very soon. He was enslaved in Virginia, and his wife and family were sold by his master down the river. So he was expected just to carry on as normal and be enslaved. He said, well, I can't spare you, but I can spare your wife and children. And he sold them down the river. So they were sent down south. So within a few months, he's obviously very upset about this. And he was always thinking he'd like to try to escape, but that was his trigger, if you like. So he found out about a man who helped slaves to escape. And he went and found him, and he told him about this new method he had, where he packaged slaves up and posted them north to freedom. And Henry Brown was packaged north to freedom in 1849. Put in this box, and the box was this size. Put in this box and transported north to freedom in the normal mail. And as you can see, the box has on it this side up with care. And it's got that written on it because he didn't want to be turned upside down. In fact, twice on the journey, the railway employees turned him upside down. In there with him, he had a bladder of water. The box was 3 foot by 3 foot by 2.5 foot, about this size. And we've got lots of quite small people here. I'd just like a small person, a volunteer, to come up. Anyone want to come up and try the box? Now this is a small person. Do you want to climb into the box and we'll see? I'll give you a chair here. Oh, you can lift it. Oh. Do you want to crouch down in the box and see how much room you've got? You need to crouch down a bit more than that. We head down. All right. And then what we do is package this young lady in. Just make believe she's Henry Box Brown. Now, how long would she be able to stay in there for? We don't really know. But Henry Box, you can stand up now, Henry Box Brown stayed in there for 27 hours. Thank you so much. Stayed in the box for 27 hours with a bladder of water. And he was more like my size. Oh.
No way, you're going to show me something.
I mean, this is slightly smaller than it should be, isn't it? It's about, but he would have actually been utterly crouched in. 27 hours, and upturned 2 points. So why is this of interest to us in Manchester? Well, when he'd escaped from slavery, he's not safe. When you're in the north, there's something called the Fugitive Slave Law, which means that any slave can be recaptured and taken back down south. His safest place is out of America, and many slaves went up to Canada. But at that point, there was a great deal of agitation in Britain against against slavery in America. And many black abolitionists came to the north and the northwest, and came to Britain in general, to speak against slavery. And Henry Box Brown, first of all, he wrote his narrative of how he escaped, and then he came to Britain. Came to Liverpool first in 1850, and then toured all around the northwest. Atherton, Ashton, Clitheroe, all over the place. Salford. And in Salford he met the Reverend Thomas Gardner Lee, who helped him to write the second version of his autobiography, and he published it out of the New Windsor Chapel in Salford. He spoke at meetings up and down the country, and at those meetings he'd take his box, and he'd actually often have the box on stage with him in it, and he'd just emerge from it and tell his story. And one time he had a meeting in Bradford one day and a meeting in Leeds the next, so he had his box posted with him in it from Bradford to Leeds. And then when they got off at Leeds Station, he had a great parade with him in a horse-drawn vehicle parading to the town hall. And he got out of the town hall and had 2 meetings in Leeds town hall. One a shilling for the richer people and one at 3p for the poorer people. And at all these meetings he'd talk about slavery and how only transatlantic agitation could get rid of it. And as we saw, partly it does because of the support of the Manchester workers in 1860 to 65 during the Civil War. Okay, so you think that's Manchester, the story told, but it's not. Just 3 years ago in 2005, some people were combing through the census and they came across a Professor Henry Box Brown, as he calls himself now, living in Cheetham in Manchester, 89 Morton Street, with his new English wife, who's from Cornwall, and 3 children, 2 girls, one born in Stockport, who's 1, one born in Manchester, I think she's about 8, and a son of 12, born in Gloucestershire. So, and by this stage, he's so rich he's able to have a servant. What a turnaround of life. What you need to think about here really is what kind of conditions must he have been in to put himself through that to escape them. And then, what an amazing life to have after you've escaped slavery. And then after 1871, he eventually goes back, and we last hear of him in 1878 doing talks in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then he goes away, and we don't hear from him ever again. So there's still loads of this man's story to find out about. And I just think that his story is just an amazing one of bravery and against the odds survival, really.
So why do we think, Alan, that this fantastic story of kind of, like you say, of endurance and overcome, why don't people in Lancashire know more about this incredible history?
It's a very good question. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're doing Revealing Histories, to try and tell these stories. I'm trying to get together I've been working on abolitionists in the Northwest for quite a long time, but I'm maybe going to try and get together an exhibition on abolitionists in the Northwest over the next couple of years, which will include the story of Henry Box Brown, but also the story of Frederick Douglass, who you might have heard of as the most famous abolitionist who came over here. He came over twice. And he'd speak to crowds of 2,000 and 3,000 in Manchester town halls and places like that, you know. And just incredible kinds of levels of interest, really. But yeah, why don't we know this story? I think it's partly it brings up too many difficult issues, really, doesn't it? You know, because if you talk about the abolition, you have to go back and talk about the slavery. If you talk about the slavery, you have to talk about British involvement. And in the late 18th century, Liverpool was the main slave capital of the whole world. It sent out more slave ships than any other port in the world. Sort of back between that 1780 and 1807. The last 25 years of the slave trade, Liverpool just sent out hundreds, well thousands of slave ships in fact. Sent out 5,000 slave ships over the course of its time.
Do you also think, Alan, in answer to that question, that the history of abolition is written by the white abolitionists rather than people like Henry Box Brown, and that's perhaps why we don't know about
there's a big sort of Wilberforce fest, isn't there? We all know about William Wilberforce and parliamentary abolition. But parliamentary abolition couldn't have happened if people hadn't sent petitions to Parliament, hadn't campaigned throughout. And one of the biggest petitions came from Manchester. What happened was there was a petition went off from the merchants saying, oh, we can't get rid of slavery, we all depend on it, of about 400. And within 4 or 5 days, there was a petition of 7,000 and 8,000 from the people of Manchester saying, actually, the people of Manchester think that slavery is diabolical. So, I think the story often gets told about the big people, doesn't it? It doesn't get told about the little people, and this is one of the things we need to do, is to start talking about the little people, really. Or not the little people, but the people that histories just prefer to kind of sweep under the carpet.